So the expected happened. The expected happened, lads. And in a shock to absolutely nobody, Caitlyn Clark is out.
A championship game, a $500,000 prize on the line, and the sport's biggest star, Caitlyn Clark, is suddenly nowhere to be found. Just moments before the biggest game of the season, a bombshell announcement rocked the WNBA. Clark was out. The official reason was a groin injury, but the story doesn't add up. The team's bizarre last-minute communication and the massive payday at stake have fueled rampant speculation that something else is going on behind the scenes. So what really happened to Caitlyn Clark? Was this a legitimate injury, a secret strategy to rest their star, or is the team hiding something much bigger? This isn't just about one game, it's about a mystery that exposes the true cost of her unprecedented fame.
To be here with you guys today, Caitlyn Clark officially ruled out for tonight's game against the Minnesota Lynx, the final of the Commissioner's Cup,
The chaos began less than 24 hours before tip-off, unfolding like a slow-motion car crash that no one could look away from. All eyes were on the Indiana Fever as they prepared for the Commissioner's Cup final against the formidable Minnesota Lynx. Initial reports from practice were overwhelmingly positive. Caitlyn Clark was participating, moving well, and appeared not only ready but eager to play. The narrative was set for a triumphant performance, a chance to silence the critics and lead her team to its first taste of championship glory. But then, the first crack in the story appeared, a small fissure that would soon rupture into a full-blown chasm of doubt. Coach Christy Sides, in her pre-game media availability, dropped a phrase that sports fans and gamblers have come to dread: game time decision.
That is not the case so far. It's looking like Caitlyn Clark will be a game time decision based off what Stephanie White just told the media today. Now,
suddenly, the air of certainty evaporated. A game-time decision implies uncertainty, a coin flip, a 50-50 chance that could go either way. For a player of Clark's magnitude, in a game with this much on the line, such vagueness felt less like a medical update and more like a strategic play. The announcement immediately created a frenzy online, with fans and reporters relentlessly refreshing their social media feeds for any shred of an update. Hours passed, with a deafening, unnerving silence from the team's front office. The ambiguity was maddening. Then, just before the game, the final word came down like a guillotine. Caitlyn Clark was officially ruled out. The whiplash was severe, turning the buzzing anticipation into a firestorm of confusion, anger, and deep-seated frustration. The team's bizarre and cryptic communication was just the beginning of this strange story, setting the stage for a night of rampant speculation.
We'll see what happens as we go through shoot around, and again, I think the most important thing for us is big picture. No sense in rushing anything, so we'll get her evaluated by the training staff. And
to truly grasp why this last-minute decision was so utterly shocking, you have to ignore the trophy for a moment and follow the money. This wasn't just another regular season game that would be forgotten by next week. This was the Commissioner's Cup final, an in-season tournament designed specifically to inject high stakes and intense drama into the middle of the season, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. A staggering $500,000 prize pool for the winning team. For players in the WNBA, this isn't just a bonus, it's a fortune. The league's supermax salary, reserved for only a handful of elite veterans, is just over $250,000. The average salary hovers closer to $150,000, and for many rookies and players on non-guaranteed contracts, that number is far, far lower.
The Fever is this team, a group that has not experienced any type of championship over the last 10 years, tries to set the tone here with a win tonight. But it's going to be difficult, as Caitlyn Clark, who did not participate in the shoot-around and stretching portions that were open to the media. She's dealing with a groin injury. She dealt previously with a quad strain. All indications is that she will not be available, but she is.
This means the prize money from winning this single game, around $35,000 per player, could represent nearly half of a rookie's annual salary. It's a down payment on a house, the complete erasure of student loan debt, or the kind of financial security that allows a player to focus solely on basketball without needing to play overseas in the offseason. This wasn't monopoly money, it was life-altering, career-changing cash. The Indiana Fever, a young and hungry team that hasn't seen a championship in over a decade, had fought their way to this moment. They had earned their shot at that prize. So for the organization to willingly sideline their best best player. The one person who could all but guarantee them that money seemed completely and utterly illogical. It was a move that defied financial sense and competitive spirit, which made the team's official excuse feel even harder to swallow.
An interesting first third of the season for your Indiana Fever. They're sitting at 8-8 right now, right at 500. Injuries have reared its ugly head, of course, with Caitlyn Clark, players coming to and from the team. Dewana Bonner no longer on the team. It's been anything but smooth sailing here to start this season. But this team is staying together, keeping the main thing, and next on the docket, a date with the Minnesota Lynx, best record in the league, for the Commissioner's Cup final on Tuesday.
The official reason given for Clark's sudden absence was a nagging groin injury. In all fairness, these types of soft tissue injuries are notoriously difficult and frustrating. They are the bane of professional athletes because they don't have a clear recovery timeline. They can linger for weeks, even months, if not managed with extreme care. Pushing through a groin strain, especially in a high-intensity game, is a massive gamble that can lead to a much more serious tear and a season-ending stint on the injured list. From a purely medical standpoint, protecting a franchise player's long-term health should always be the #1 priority. No single game, no matter the prize, is worth sacrificing an entire season or career. However, the timeline presented by the team simply didn't add up for skeptical fans and seasoned analysts. The central burning question remained: how does a player go from practicing with the team one day, looking fine, to being completely unable to play the next? This wasn't a sudden, acute injury that happened in front of cameras. It was a lingering issue that suddenly became debilitating overnight. The team's lack of transparency did nothing to quell the suspicion. Instead of offering a clear explanation, they hid behind the game time decision smokescreen, a tactic that often creates more drama than it prevents. This wall of silence fueled speculation that the groin injury, while perhaps real, was also a convenient excuse. It left everyone wondering what the team wasn't telling us, and whether the truth was far more complicated than a simple medical report. While the questions and theories swirled online, the immediate real-world consequences fell squarely on the shoulders of Caitlyn Clark's teammates. The entire Indiana Fever offense, from its core philosophy to its nightly game plan, is built around her unprecedented talent. Her ability to score from 30 feet out, combined with her elite court vision and passing, creates a kind of basketball gravity that warps opposing defenses. Teams are forced to double-team her as soon as she crosses half-court, leaving her teammates with wide-open lanes and uncontested shots. She is not just a part of their system, she is their system. Without her on the floor, the team's offensive identity completely vanished. Suddenly, a blinding spotlight swiveled onto veterans like Kelsey Mitchell and the team's star center, Aaliyah Boston. They were no longer complementary pieces operating in the space Clark created. They were now expected to carry the entire offensive load against one of the most disciplined and ferocious defensive teams in the league. It was like asking a finely tuned orchestra to perform a complex symphony after the conductor and the entire string section decided to stay home. The pressure was immense, the task was monumental, and the challenge bordered on impossible. The Fever weren't just missing their best player, they were missing the engine that made everything else run, and they had to figure out how to build a new one in the middle of a championship game. As the Indiana Fever organization remained tight-lipped and strategically vague, the media on the ground became de facto detectives, tasked with piecing together the truth from scattered clues. Reporters like Scott Agnes and Ben Pickman, who follow the team relentlessly, provided crucial real-time updates that often stood in stark contrast to the team's polished and evasive messaging. Their photos from the pre-game shoot-around at the Target Center told a story that no carefully worded press conference ever could. Caitlyn Clark was nowhere to be seen. She wasn't stretching, she wasn't on the sidelines, she wasn't even in the building. This was not a game-time decision in practice. This was a player who was clearly not playing. These on-the-ground reports provided the only concrete evidence fans had, cutting through the fog of corporate PR and strategic ambiguity. It created a fascinating dynamic, a battle for the narrative playing out in public. On one side, you had the team, trying to control the flow of information and maintain a competitive advantage. On the other, you had the media, armed with smartphones and long-lens cameras, providing raw, unfiltered reality. This clash highlighted the power of modern sports reporting, where independent journalists act as a vital check on the official narratives pushed by teams. In the end, a single photo of an empty spot on the court did more to reveal the truth than any statement the team was willing to make. With no clear answers from the team and a story full of holes, the internet did what it does best. It erupted into a roaring 24/7 conspiracy factory. With the information vacuum left by the Fever, fans and pundits rushed in to fill the void with their own theories, ranging from the plausible to the outlandish. The first and most popular theory was that this was a classic case of load management. After the intense physical toll of her rookie season and the notoriously rough, often borderline dirty play she's faced from veterans, perhaps the team made a calculated business decision. They decided her long-term health and her ability to play deep into the playoffs were more valuable assets than one game's prize money, even if it meant frustrating fans and teammates in the short term. A second, darker theory claimed that the groin injury was a cover-up for something far more serious. Perhaps the injury was not just nagging, but severe, and the team was downplaying it to prevent widespread panic among the fan base and a drop in future ticket sales. Others speculated it wasn't physical at all, but a case of mental burnout from the crushing, non-stop media spotlight she has lived under for nearly a year. The most dramatic theory, however, was that the WNBA itself had quietly intervened. This theory suggests that the league, recognizing Clark as its billion-dollar asset, strongly encouraged the Fever to be overly cautious, to protect their star from the league's own physicality. They couldn't afford to have their main attraction injured. These weren't just wild guesses, they were compelling narratives born from the team's own refusal to be transparent. This incident wasn't just a loss for the Indiana Fever, it was a significant blow to the entire WNBA ecosystem. Caitlyn Clark is more than a basketball player. She is a one-woman stimulus package for women's sports. TV networks like ESPN, ABC, and even ION have seen their viewership numbers skyrocket to historic levels every time she steps on the court. Advertisers are lining up and paying premium rates to have their products featured during Fever games. The league has bet its entire growth strategy on her shoulders, marketing her as the face of a new, more popular era. So when she is unexpectedly pulled from a primetime high-stakes championship game, the financial ripple effects are massive. The networks lose their main draw, the advertisers lose eyeballs, and the WNBA loses a golden opportunity to showcase its best product to a national audience. This frames the team's decision as a high-stakes business gamble. Were they protecting their most valuable long-term asset at the cost of immediate revenue and a marquee television event? Or was the league itself willing to take the hit, viewing one lost game as a small price to pay to ensure their golden goose can keep laying golden eggs for the next decade? It transforms the narrative from a simple injury report into a complex corporate decision, weighing short-term gains against long-term billion-dollar aspirations. While the players were thinking about a $35,000 bonus, the executives in boardrooms were thinking about the health of a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. While the Fever, the fans, and the league were reeling from the chaos, one group was quietly watching the drama unfold with a sense of relief and opportunity: the Minnesota Lynx. Preparing to face Caitlyn Clark is a strategic nightmare. Coaches spend days designing complex defensive schemes specifically to slow her down. Every player on the court has to be hyper aware of where she is at all times, because a single lapse in concentration results in a three-pointer in your face. The Lynx had likely spent all their practice time game planning for a generational talent, only to find out at the last second that their biggest problem had disappeared. The uncertainty created by the Fever's game-time decision was a form of psychological warfare, but it likely hurt Indiana more than it helped. While the Fever were in a state of disarray, scrambling to adjust their entire offense, the Lynx could breathe a collective sigh of relief. Their job had just become infinitely easier. They no longer had to worry about the league's most dynamic offensive weapon. Instead, they could revert to a more standard defensive plan, focusing their energy on shutting down a now predictable and discombobulated Fever team. The chaos on the other side gave Minnesota a massive mental edge. They walked onto the court focused, confident, and prepared, while their opponents were still reeling from the shock. For the Lynx, the path to that $500,000 prize had just been cleared of its single biggest obstacle. In the end, this entire saga is about more than just one game, one injury, or one controversial decision. It pulls back the curtain on the central, complicated paradox of the Caitlyn Clark era. The WNBA, its teams, its broadcast partners, and its sponsors all desperately need her on the court. Her presence guarantees sellout crowds in every arena, record-shattering television ratings, and a level of mainstream media coverage that the league has never seen before. She is an economic engine, a cultural phenomenon, and the face of the sport's future. But that same relentless pressure, the grueling schedule, the physical toll, and the impossible weight of carrying an entire league on her 22-year-old shoulders may be the very things that are breaking her down. She is both the solution to the league's exponential growth and a potential victim of it. This bizarre episode, with its confusing timeline, massive stakes, and cascade of unanswered questions, might be the first major crack in that delicate foundation. It leaves us all to wonder what the true cost of the Caitlyn Clark effect really is, and what this strange secretive night in Minnesota tells us about the future of its biggest star.